Hi, fourth grade. I hope you're having a thankful Thursday and you're ready for another fun day in language. Let's do a little bit of review of what we learned together on Tuesday. Remember those objects that I brought in? I brought one bowl that was big. I brought in another bowl that was bigger. And then I brought the biggest bowl of them all. On Tuesday, we started talking about comparison or comparing when you have two items or when you have three or more items. For Tuesday's lesson, if we had two items, we added ER. Remember the word big? We doubled the G and then added ER to the end. For big, if we're showing three or more items, we doubled the G and added EST to the end. And that works all fine and well, but today we're going to be talking about how to still make that same comparison for two items or three or more items, but if you're using longer and bigger words. When you are using longer or bigger words to show comparison and you're talking about just two items, we're not going to put ER at the end of the comparing word. Instead, we're going to put a whole separate word in front of that word. The word that we're going to use to compare two or more things is the word more. More. Now you'll still hear your clue word than that you could be listening for or just be looking for the two items that you're comparing. Let's see how I use the word more in this sample sentence. Football is a more popular sport than tennis in the United States. There's my word than, my clue word. What are the two items that I'm comparing? Football and tennis. Of course, my favorite of the two is tennis. I know Francesca loves tennis, but the boys, you guys are football all the way. So that's okay. You like what you like, and that's okay. That's wonderful. All right, so let's look at the word popular. Popular is the word. We're comparing football and tennis and how popular that they are. Now, would it sound okay for us to say football is popular sport than tennis in the United States? I don't think so, because popular is a longer word. Instead of adding ER to the end of popular, let's add the word more in front of popular. But you know me, I always have to have a memory hook. Look carefully in the word more, M-O-R-E. If we flip those around, doesn't that give us an ER? So my memory hook for me is just how we use ER to compare two things. We're also going to use more to compare two things. But here's something you would never want to do. You never want to add ER to the end of a comparing word and put more out in front. That's not grammatically correct. We actually have a term for that. It's called a double comparison. And that's not okay. We're only going to do one or the other. We would never have both. Typically, we put more out in front if the word like popular is a little bit longer than other words like big that we were using yesterday. Now, what if we were comparing not two sports, but three or more items? Well, if that's the case, we would use this word, most, M-O-S-T, to compare three or more things. Now, be on the listen because you will still hear the word the that will come out in front, kind of signaling to you that you're talking about three or more things here. Let's look at this sentence. Basketball is the most popular sport at our school. Did you see the word the here? And hey, look, most even has a T at the very end. So that can be another little memory hook, okay? Just like EST had a T at the end, most had a T at the end. All right, so we're using the word most popular, those two words, because think about it. How many sports do we play at our school? Just two? Oh no, three or more. So since we play three or more sports at our school, We needed to use the word most when we were showing comparison between all of the other sports that we play at our school. Let's go ahead and open up our book to our pages for today. We're on language lesson 126, and that'll be found on page 247. Would you join me? Let's look at the top. Use more with long adjectives to compare two people, places, or things. Use most with long adjectives to compare more than two. And they give you some examples here. Inline skates are more expensive than roller skates. Skateboards are the most expensive. Use more with longer adverbs and adverbs that end in ly to compare to. Use most with longer adverbs and adjectives that end in ly to compare to or more than two, excuse me. Let's look at the circle here. More and most are never used with ER or EST, writing the same word. That's what I mentioned earlier, talking about a double comparison. We're never going to use more with ER or EST with most. We're only going to use one. Let's look at the guided practice together. Fill in the circle, neatly, completely, and darkly, next to the correct answer. Let's look at number 1 together. Now, you'll notice that both of those sentences look very similar to one another, but we have to look carefully to determine the slight differences. Camels are, I'm kind of looking down to see where they don't match. Camels is the same, are is the same. Actually, watch, I can do it this way. Follow the red dot. Camels, the same. Are, the same. Probably, the same. The same. Most, more, different. So that's where I need to hone in and pay attention right there. Back up one word. What's that word right there? The. Do you remember which word we use when the comes out in front? Let's see if you answer correctly. The first one, we're going to use most whenever we have a the out in front. Now let's read the correct sentence together. Ready, begin. Camels are probably the most famous of all desert animals. We're talking about of all the desert animals that God created, and boy, he created a lot, didn't he? Camels are the most famous, to us anyways. Number 2. Remember, I want you to look down and see where there's a difference. Same, 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 same. Ooh, this is different. Should it be larger or more larger than the dromedary camel? Well, let's think back to what I said earlier and our hint in the oval that we read. Can we ever have a word that ends in ER with more out in front? No, that's called a double comparison. We can only have one or the other. Large, and even though large means really big, it's actually a small word. Remember our rule from yesterday? If we're dealing with small words, we're just going to add an ER if we're just comparing one thing to another. Just in case you're wondering, the memory hook for that one was the word than. It's right there. Do you see that? Number 3, camels are the more or most useful way. Did you see the word the out in front? Right there. There's the. If we have the coming out in front, will we use more or will we use most? Let's see if you're right. We should use most if we are having the preceding the word. Let's look down at the next section. Number 4. Write the correct adjective or adverb form of the word in parentheses. The word that we're using here is skillful. Camels are blank than horses at surviving in the desert. Did you see that clue word there? Then tells us that we're talking about 2 items. What were the 2 items that we were comparing here? A horse and a camel. 2 animals are being compared. When you're comparing 2 animals, what word will you put out in front if you're dealing with a longer word like skillful? More skillful. Number 5, the word that we're using in this sentence is fast. Now let's stop and think about that word for a moment. Is fast a very long word, a large word? No, it's actually kind of small. Kind of like the words that we were using in yesterday's lesson. Camels drink water blank than cows do. There's that hint again. Camels drink water more fast than camels do? That doesn't sound right. No, maybe fast is dealing with yesterday's lesson. If we're comparing two things, what two letters did we put to the end or add on to the end of that word? ER. Camels drink water faster than cows do. I think that was a little tricky one. They put it in there just to see if we were paying attention from yesterday. Our last one, number 6. Look at that big camel. Items made from camel hair are the blank in the desert. The word that we're using here is plentiful. Did you notice how large of a word plentiful is? Did you also see our little clue, the? What do you think is going to go in the blank? If we're dealing with a large word and the comes out in front, aren't we comparing for your more things? Let's add most. Items made from camel hair are the most plentiful in the desert. All right, students, we did a wonderful job working through that front page together. Remember, when you're comparing 2 items or 3 items and you're using a longer word of comparison, let's add more in front of the word if we're comparing 2 items and most in front of the word if we're comparing 3 or more. Just as a reminder, we're never going to use ER and more at the same time, and we would never use most and EST at the same time. We're only going to use one or the other. Let's go ahead and turn that page to page 248, and it's time for you to try the independent practice on your own. I can't wait to see you later on today. I love you and I miss you. I miss you more today than I did yesterday. All right, guys. I love you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.